back in the day before the internet, now AI and all those things, I mean, there was a benefit to knowing that everything was going to be the same regardless of what city you're in. And now the traveler is really looking for something a lot more different. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for a sense of place. They're looking for...
Welcome to the very first international episode of The Blue Corner. Today, I'm here with Lindsey Ueberroth, CEO of Preferred Hotels&Resorts. Welcome, Lindsey.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Ours. And Roberta Possenti, Vice President Europe for Preferred Hotels&Resorts. Welcome, Roberta.
Thank you for inviting us, Eugenia.
So before we start, I'd like to thank Sarah Maxwell from your PR team for helping me arrange this moment of conversation with you. Sarah, if you're listening, which I'm sure you are, thank you so much again. How long have you been working together?
So Roberta's actually been at the company longer than my family has owned the company. So over 21 years. And you celebrated 20 years.
I started in 2002, so 23 years and still running.
Wow, so very long time
working
together. You must know each other really well.
We do. And we look the same as we did 23 years ago.
I'm sure. Yeah, I know. So to break the ice, I actually wanted to ask you sort of a personal question because, you know, you've been traveling and meeting hoteliers for many years and you've been living and breathing hotels for such a long time. What's the first memory or image that comes to your mind when you think about hospitality?
In general?
Yeah. It can be a memory, it can be...
Gosh, that's like such a difficult question. And I always say the last hotel I stayed at is probably my most memorable moment, right? So I just came from Hotel Gran Tramezzo at Lake Como, obviously a beautiful property.
Yes.
And there's something about, I've always said this about doormen at properties because that's generally some of the first people that you see. And there's just a very warm, lovely gentleman who every day was there, arms open, buongiorno, whatever he was going to say. And I don't know, there's just something so warm and welcoming about who greets you when you show up at that door.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so he was very memorable. There's a lot of memorable things though, but he puts a smile on my face. So I'll go with that.
Yeah, goal achieved. And Roberta?
I always think that when you stay at a hotel, the lasting memory is always the breakfast when you leave.
True.
So if I think of this summer when I visited Il Salviatino, our newest legend member in Italy that just joined, having that amazing breakfast at Giacomo's, facing the gardens and everything, was really amazing. So it's a nice farewell. Or arrivederci.
Arrivederci, yes. So Lindsey, Preferred Hotels&Resorts has evolved from a family venture to the largest network of independent hotels. And you have now 600 hotels over 80 countries, right?
Yes.
So how do you lead a global company while keeping a family spirit? Because, actually, I didn't know it's a family business on a large scale.
Well, just quick little backstory to the company's actually been around for 55 years. My family got involved, purchased the company 22 years ago. And I think at the end of the day, we believe in the power of family. And I say that we're family owned, but not necessarily family run in the sense of, yes, I'm the CEO and leader, but we have hired incredible talent. And I think that's been part of it. But when we hire people, we're looking for people that have that entrepreneurial spirit that we do. Roberta's a great example. Somebody who looks at the company and runs it as if they were their own business, but as part of the family. My family is very involved. My mom and dad are still involved in the business. They travel quite extensively. They're great ambassadors. We spend a lot of time with the various teams around the globe. And I think that's part of it. At the end of the day, we're in this for the long run. We don't have shareholders. It's just us. So it's a very personal endeavor for us. And that's why we spend a lot of time traveling and meeting with our hotel partners and our own team to keep that culture. That's the important part. And when we look to hire people that we say we want to have a long dinner with them.
Nice.
Yeah, that's, you really want...
That represents
absolutely.
the type of relationship you want to have with the people at work.
Yeah.
I prefer that. And so do you feel that family spirit too?
Definitely, yes. As an associate.
You've seen the change, right? From before.
Yes, I was there 2 years before, but I remember meeting John and Gail. They bought the company in March. It was ITB in 2004. And then in May, I got invited to Paris to meet them. And I still remember the day I got the email please come and meet the new owners. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Really? And so I went to lunch at the Castille, which had the Alain Ducasse restaurant, and had an amazing lunch with John Gale and a few more people. And then I was taken to my taxi to go back. So, that was my first meeting. And then we met again in London, where we had our annual conference. And then John Ueberroth was in Italy for 10 days visiting properties. So, and I have to say, it's amazing to work for such an amazing family, which has an entrepreneurial spirit, a vision about where to take the company. And I'm still here because it's extremely interesting. And there's always innovation.
So in that case, it was a long lunch.
Keeps it relevant.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a long lunch.
Not dinner. So I'd like to talk, because, the title I'd like to give to this episode is The Power of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
So in a market where groups and chains are taking over, sort of, and standardization is at the core of, this type of hotels, where do you think the power of independence lie, in your opinion?
Well, it's funny because obviously there's a proliferation of the brands for sure. But we're also seeing this as really a great time for the independents, because I think what's happening obviously you look at how people can search, and back in the day before the internet, now AI and all those things, there was a benefit to knowing that everything was going to be the same regardless of what city you're in. And now the traveler is really looking for something a lot more different. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for a sense of place. They're looking for connection to the community. And that's what the independent hotels do, not what the chains do. If you think about it, depending on where you are in the world, a lot of them are family owned.
Yes.
And that spirit comes through in terms of how they want to own and operate. And so, the world's a different place now. And I think that owners, management companies, developers now really realize that there's a power to independence because, one, you can a lot more flexibility to build and develop and operate a hotel that has that sense of place. But again, that's what the traveler's really looking for. And Preferred Hotels and Resorts gives that scale and access and all of the things that a big brand and chain bring, but with a lot more flexibility and that true sense of place, one of a kind, what I think travelers are looking for. There's tourists and there's travelers. So I think there's also a fine line between the type of people that stay at different properties.
True.
That's my opinion.
I would add that from a hotelier's standpoint, sometimes when you're an independent hotel, you're kind of on your own.
Yes.
You kind of maybe have an idea of where you want to go, but you don't know if the steps you're taking are actually going to take you there. And sometimes some of the doors are actually closed. And what we do really well is open those doors for you so that you can actually walk in and you're part of a community, so that you have other elements that you can count on apart from our own teams and offices, which tend to be local, speaking the same language, to be able to have an understanding of the local culture and be that trait d'union between the company and the hotelier and the companies.
Yeah.
To make sure that there is alignment. And I think, with independent hoteliers, their DNA is very strong. And what we do is we really try and amplify that and bring it out to the world. So it's a very exciting job to have.
Yes, I was thinking, to being independent, you also need courage, right? To compete against big groups. And it's true that I said before that big brands are all over the world, but I've listened to a recent interview you had in a podcast, and you also said that there's a reverse trend, right, of deflagging. So many hotels are trying to go back to independence, right? And I was curious, is this something that we see all over the world? Is it something we also see in Europe? Is it something we see more in the US?
Yes, we've seen a lot of deflags, and it did primarily start in the US originally. And we're talking about deflags from every major brand, Ritz-Carlton to Four Seasons to Hyatt. So
why is that?
I again, that's what I was referring to before. I think hotel owners are realizing I've got a beautiful property in a great location, and I really want to be able to operate this asset the way that I want to. And the chains are very prescriptive. There's a lot of rules, and this is how you're going to. These are the sheets you're going to use, and this is the way we want you to operate. And there's a manual for everything. And I think that they've realized, gosh, if I have an opportunity to work with a partner like Preferred Hotels and Resorts, which gives me a lot of that infrastructure and a lot of that reach, but without all that rigidity, it not only gives you a lot more flexibility, but it also drops a lot down to the bottom line in a lot of ways. Now, that being said, it is really now becoming a global trend. So we are starting to see that more. Roberta can definitely comment what's happening specifically in Europe, but we have seen it happen more so in Asia and the Middle East, which has been really interesting to see that happen, especially in the past year. But I'll let you comment on.
We've seen the Alp tour that deflagged very recently. And of course, we are seeing it. We're seeing the brands, to your point, they are proliferating more and they're increasing their so-called soft brands to reach into and tap into the market. But to your point, the independents that have that courage and they want to have their DNA out there and they want to speak their mind and they want to be as special as they want to be, right? Yeah. So they have an opportunity with Preferred to do that. And therefore, why stay with a flag when you can actually go independent and have, that opportunity?
Yeah, in fact, my question was also, is Preferred Hotels and Resorts positioning itself as a support, to these hoteliers who want to deflag?
Absolutely. I mean, I think now, and I've lost count. I mean, we've probably done close to 30, 40 deflags, like I said, from across the chains. And so I think we've learned and we've seen a lot of great things in terms of prepping those hotels for what to expect, right? And the teams are really, really good at now saying, okay, the day that cutover happens, here's all the things that we're going to have ready for you to go so you don't miss a beat. You're never in the dark. We're there to have their sales and marketing and distribution plan all set to go, how we want to tell that story. And so, yeah, I do think we've become experts in that space. I think it's something that we excel at.
And going back to a few years ago, I know you led a major rebrand of Preferred Hotels and Resorts. We also have a marketing agency, so we're very curious to know when there's a nice and well-done rebrand to talk about it. So you mentioned in the same interview I watched a few nights ago that you had many sub-brands and that you unified everything under one identity. What was the situation back then, and what was the final result that you achieved through that?
It was an interesting time because at that point in time we were a house of brands. And so we were like, pick a major brand, pick a Marriott, Preferred and Summit and Sterling, and we actually were going to launch another brand. We were planning to launch a brand, that was focused on more design-oriented hotels. And
so each category of hotels basically had
it was actually styles of luxury at the time, but they all had different names. They were all independent, and we wanted to launch one that was focused on design-oriented. And going through the process, and we had a great brand partner. His name is Robert Louis. He's still a very close friend. And we sat down and he says, I just feel like right now all the brands are doing this. The consumers are very confused. Let's talk about what are you really trying to accomplish? And through that conversation, we actually completely pivoted and said, let's do the reverse of what all the brands are doing and let's retire brands, which was not an easy decision because we had hotels that had been longtime partners and were very loyal to Summit or Sterling.
Yeah.
But he said, and we finally said, Preferred Hotels and Resorts has the greatest heritage, right? It had been around the longest. And let's simplify. Let's really leverage that and let's redefine what this brand stands for, which it is about independent hotels. It's about luxury. And then let's flip it on its head and have one brand, but define it by collections, which were meant to define styles of luxury.
Okay.
Which I think was also a different way of looking at what we were doing. That was my definition of luxury might be different than yours.
Definitely.
Or it might be different depending on why we're traveling, right? So if I'm traveling on a very special occasion with my significant other, I might only want to stay at ultra luxury 5-star. Now, if I'm traveling for business, I might be in a destination that doesn't necessarily have an ultra luxury property. It has a luxury property, but more on that casual.
And
luxury.
that's okay.
And we wanted to be able to capture that traveler regardless of how and why they were traveling. And that's why we ended up creating the collections underneath the core brand of Preferred Hotels and Resorts. And I think it served us well. I think it clarified for consumers, the travel trade. I think it built more trust around what we were doing and, allowed us to tell that story a lot more seamlessly, consistently.
Yes.
And, it was a lot of work. I remember that.
I saw Roberta's face while you were telling the story.
It was not easy explaining to 600 hotels why we were doing this. And changing brand identities and all that, but it served us really well.
It was quite an experience, yes, to have the opportunity to explain the new branding. I would say that the alignment is also with the quality standards, because of course we have hotels across the world and we have hotels in different collections, but we do have quality standards or criteria that are shared so that the experience that the guest will have will be similar across the collection. And I think that's important to point it out. And to Lindsey's point, capturing the traveler regardless of the reason for travel. We can also see that through our loyalty program, I prefer, that we can see the same guest depending on the reason of travel or the destination, picking and choosing different hotels in different collections. So it's been very successful.
Yeah. And Roberta, I have a question for you now, because, I'd love to talk about Italy a little bit since we're here. Because I went through your luxury travel report, and that Italy is one of the countries with the highest concentration of independent hotels. So I was wondering, do we require like a specific approach, when getting in touch with hoteliers and knowing that most of them are family run? Does this family spirit we were talking about before help?
Definitely helps. The family spirit helps. And I think it's the approach that comes from the family. So we are a business, but the family approach and the way John, Gail, and Lindsey have always posed the approach with the hoteliers, it's a very much hands-on, very open about what we can do. And it's a partnership that we try to develop. So it's not just about getting them on the brand, it's about doing things together and making things work for both of us. We look at win-win situations. So our approach is very different, I think, to some of the other partners that there are in market. And the hotels and the family-owned businesses really appreciate that we are trying to focus on what their business is, what their strategy is. We have an office here in Milan, and we follow through on things at the local level.
And, well, you being Italian, do you find there's a particular way we embody independence in Italy compared to other European countries?
Well, it's very personal in Italy. It's an expression of the personality of the owner in many different ways. We mentioned Salviatino, we mentioned Grand Hotel Tremezzo, great ownerships, privately owned. But there's other hotels, we're going to work with some of the other partners, and they are amazing to work with, to understand. And through Sarah and the team, PR and social media, getting them on board. We work with Le Fez, two amazing properties, spa destinations. So everyone has their own DNA, and we try and create experiences so that across the board, our guests will actually be able to experience great itineraries in Italy using many of these personalities.
I'd like to have your overseas
because I travel the world, and so obviously we've got hotels all over the globe. Italian hotels have definitely a different esprit de corps. They love, I never come here when we're not hosting some sort of cocktail with all the Italian hoteliers. They all show up. They love being together. I think there is a uniqueness to doing business in Italy and the hotel partners that we have. I really, really do. I have a lot of respect for the fact that I think that they see competition in a very different way in some ways.
Such as?
We've done road shows in the U.S. in particular, where the Italian hoteliers, they all want to go together. Because I think they love telling the story of Italy, and to your point, this pride around a lot of them being family owned and operated. But I think that the way that they define and look at luxury is also different. And so I think that there's something very special about doing business here. And Roberta's done a great job. We have over 70 hotels.
Yes, very, very, very proud.
All in Italy.
All in Italy. Yeah. And so that says a lot too. So I just think it's a very unique country to do business. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you. Well, another trend that I saw on your luxury travel report, that when I read it, I was like, finally, someone that is saying the word is beigeification of hotels. Because it's so true, more and more you step into hotels and they all feel and look the same, or you see pictures on social media and of lobbies of rooms and they all look the same. And so I'm like, is it like when in doubt, go beige or something like that? And how can you, as Preferred Hotels and Resorts, perhaps help into, fighting this being all alike?
Well, by nature of being in a collection of independent luxury hotels, none of them are the same. So we are the anti-beige.
Yes.
It's just by nature of the way that the brand and the hotels in the brand operate. However, I will say that there sometimes are these trends around, I'll make one up, but it's, you have to have the grand flowers as you enter the lobby versus it being, something that's really authentic to the destination and the sense of place. And so, I think part of it is our quality assurance standards definitely do take that into account, because it's really about how do you make the guest feel. In addition, you expect to have a beautiful property with all the right amenities and services, but it's really how do you feel when you walk in there? What is that emotion behind it? And I think our team does a great job when a hotel's saying, well, maybe why am I not connecting with the guests? We have 600 hotels that we're looking at, and you can give a lot of examples of unique things that properties are doing to bring in their neighborhood. And the Instagrammable moments are less about it looking like the last hotel, and it's about finding something that was a big wow.
Yes, definitely. But it's, as I said, when I read it, I was like, okay, I can name 5 hotels that I've visited, I've seen that look the same, and very few that
there's a brand I won't mention, but they're opening up a new property in one of our markets. And I said, oh, does it look like that blank brand that you go to? They said, it looks exactly the same, right? So I said, I don't understand that, right? It's a really unique place. So for it to look the same, to me, is a mistake.
I think it's sort of linked to the courage I was mentioning before. Even in that, you need to dare also to understand what your identity is, because I think that also reflects on the design, on the colors, on the atmosphere you want to give.
Absolutely. I just think that there's a lot of things that hotels can do that do take courage. Even how they train their guests, or their staff to interact with the guest.
Definitely. So if I was to ask to a general manager or one of your hotel member why preferred, what do you think the answer will be?
You want to go first?
Oh, that's a very interesting. It's probably going to be a different answer depending on who you're talking
I'm sure.
to, because they have different viewpoints, I believe. So preferred, because we work so closely with them, then we really focus on what their strategy is, what they're trying to achieve. And to your point before, we try and make them feel part of a community. And we share a lot of information. So even in our conferences, there's a lot of different speakers talking about lots of different trends, and some people are doing something, some people are doing other things. And that really supports them in understanding what they want to stand for, and to really, understand what their identity is in the market. And that's also the other point with the travel advisors. We work with a lot of travel advisors, and the travel advisors, when they actually visit and talk to the hotel, then they have an interpretation of the hotel that really helps the hotel understand, as I said, what they stand for and how they are seen. And that's something that I think is precious, that we allow and we actually encourage. And that helps independent hotels and independent owners to really understand, their courage, yes, and understand what their identity, their identity and what they want to express in today's world.
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, I think a lot of people would say, I feel part of the preferred family. And I think that there is something to be said for that we are very relationship driven. We put our actions and our investments behind what we say. My family really is passionate about travel. So we really believe in the power of travel, but we've also always been a very sales driven organization. And I've always said, as CEO, the worst thing to me would be to sit down across from a hotel and not be able to take feedback, because we're here to deliver results. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why they're hiring us. And I think we put our money where our mouths are. I think we continue to invest. But I do believe that the relationships that we create are definitely a big driver. We've had, as you know, in the hotel industry, people move on and they go to different properties, and we remain friends, and a lot of them come back into the family down the road. And so I think it's also something that we're very proud of.
Yeah, building a safety net for all the hotels,
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, we have to do our job, and we've got to deliver tangible results.
And if I was
we do in a personal manner.
Yeah, definitely. And if I was to, that's your identity.
Yeah.
So, hotels have their own and you have yours.
Yes.
And if I was to ask the same question to a traveler who joined your loyalty program, what would that be, the answer?
Because I have friends, so I always ask them, what do they think? We're just a much more interesting brand to travel with, right? So I think for them, it's I mean, it's a very American thing, Girl Scouts. It's like collecting badges, right? I mean, I think that there's something so fun for them about staying in these beautiful, iconic, one-of-a-kind properties around the globe that is very different than saying I've stayed at, I love the Four Seasons brand. So this is not a knock on Four Seasons, but I've stayed at Four Seasons. So I think there's something very fun about being able to throw out a name of a hotel that somebody goes, where is that? Mm-hmm. And then you get into that storytelling that I think is something that's very special. And the fact that you can get recognition and points, and I think we continue to really innovate that program as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw something for your Instagram.
Yeah.
Like new partnerships.
Yeah,
and
I think it's the authenticity, it's authentic. And to Lindsey's point, the hotels usually connect you to the culture, connect you to the experiences. So it's something very special that the hoteliers have, because they are usually local and they know their market. So they can actually give you the hints and the insights of where to go, what to do at a different level. They also usually bring in the F&B scene. So the local wines, local food, great cooking classes. So I think it's also about the authenticity.
Yeah, definitely. It actually anticipated one of my questions, which was, in Europe, we hear authenticity all the time, especially when we want to attract US travelers. So how do you communicate authenticity without being cliche? And then how do you put that in practice? And how do you differentiate from other independent hotels that offer that local experience as well?
Well, that's where it's for where we sit in terms of the brand. So the brand is telling one story, and then how the hotels tell their story is also different. And I think that that's a big part of where we try to act as consultative with our hotel partners, right? So we spend a lot of time really trying to understand, what is the story you're trying to tell? And then as your brand, how do we continue to amplify that story? And that authenticity, like you said, it's an overused term. And so I think that the other thing that we really try to work with our hotels on is just continual evolution of what they're doing, right? And so I think the hotels that really succeed, they're always evolving, right? Whether it's a pop-up restaurant or they're partnering with local brands or different things. And that's where I think the authenticity comes from, in addition to the people that they have on property. And that's where our brand standards come into play. How do you execute on that guest experience? And it is not a cookie cutter process. A property in Italy is going to behave very differently than a property in Thailand, which is going to be very differently than a property in Rio, And so I think that that's where you have to make sure that those brand standards apply, but to the local market that they're in.
Yeah.
And that's the role that we play. We're there to consult and educate and, help them really amplify their story. But then we do it on the brand level by making sure people understand we're there to celebrate independence.
Well, there's a lot of creativity behind that.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, really telling the stories of our hotels is a lot of fun. It is, we never lack for how to do that. It's just how do you make sure that you tell it in the best manner possible?
And talking about travelers, always from your report, this is also a point that Sarah brought up during a call that we had. 84% of travelers are now booking their holidays through a travel advisor rather than doing the search, on their own. Why do you think there's this need of, going back to human connection, even because we have OTAs, we have AI, you can plan a holiday in 1 second. I did it myself when I went to the US a few months ago. I was, I had no idea where to go. I asked ChatGPT and I did my itinerary. Why do you feel like there's this, return to human connection? And also, do you think that the role of the travel advisor is emerging and is growing thanks to social media as well? Because there are a lot of working on social media.
Yeah. There's like a 3-part question there.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Sometimes in my mind just...
But it's great. So 84% going back to using travel advisors. Let's start with that. I think it is because people are traveling further abroad than they used to as well. So I think, and let's face it, it's efficiency. So to go talk to a travel advisor who is an expert in a destination, I think is really important, right? So you've got that expertise, and they're doing more than just booking air and hotels now. I just worked with a travel agent recently on my honeymoon, and they got into what restaurants do you want to stay at, what local experiences do you want to book. They just take a lot of the work out of, you could do a private transfer, or you could rent a car, or you could do this. And so they just give you a lot more information that to me made the process a lot more seamless. And again, they're experts. They're not just doing what I think people used to think was just Aaron Hotel and that's it. And so it's just a much more pleasurable experience. And a lot less time is spent doing the research on 30 different websites. And until AI gets better, it's a lot more accurate too.
Definitely. I was thinking, I did it as a sort of experiment, to try and test the itineraries.
And it's great until you find out that restaurant isn't open anymore, or it's seasonal. Or there's a lot of things there's some holes in the AI that we're working through. So that was the first question. I don't know if you want to layer onto that.
Well, I think it's just easy, right? Yeah. So people are using to simplify their lives. And I think it's easy to get to, talk to Eugenia and say, hey, I want to go to London next weekend. Today is Wednesday, so I want to fly on Friday. Mm-hmm. So can you just arrange it for me? Eugenia knows everything that she needs to know, so she can sort it out and give me my perfect itinerary.
That's true. That's true. I need to try that after trying the AI.
I loved working with the travel agent. It was amazing. And you brought up social media. And yes, I do think that a lot of travel advisors have done a tremendous job of having a really good social media presence. And what I like about it is, and I've got some great examples of travel advisors I follow, they really do a great job of showing you the destination. So it's not just about a hotel and one place. It's the destination in general, and really getting you excited about where you're going, and also exposing you to new places to go, new maybe better times of the year to travel. So it's not peak season, or when to go with your family versus it. So I think they've done a great job of really becoming ambassadors for travel.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, compared to your own research, you can do all the research that you want, but if you're talking to a human being that is an expert of that destination, there's first of all there's the human connection that we said, and then there's this customization of the trip, as you were saying. Are you traveling with a family? Is it a honeymoon? And
my travel agent asked me. I don't think she asked it this way, but it was sort of, what's your level of activity that you like to have when you travel? What type of food do you like? And she asked questions that initially I thought were interesting. It was an interesting process, but I was glad she did, because I realized a couple of the properties we were staying at early on, if you had any mobility issues, would be challenging, right? Either a lot of steps. I mean, it was a beautiful property, but you have to be able to maybe climb 100 steps up and down to your room, and you're in the jungle. So if that's not what you're looking for, you could go online and book that hotel on your own and have no idea, and then show up and say, this was not what I signed up for. But you've got a travel agent who's like, listen, I'm going to tell you based on what you've told me what I think is the right fit for you.
Yeah, definitely. Another, one last trend that I'd like to discuss with you is sustainability, because you're also CEO and VP Europe for Beyond Green. So actually, I wanted to ask you, first of all, how did you come up with this new Is it a network as well, or is it, because it's not a certificate, right, that you get?
No, it's a brand.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a brand, just like Preferred Hotels and Resorts, or a program, depending on how. So some hotels can be a part of Preferred and use Beyond Green as, I'll call it, like a marketing platform as well.
How'd you come up with that?
Oh gosh, it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was
not that long.
I was introduced to a gentleman named Costas Chris at Virtuoso Travel Week in Las Vegas through a Preferred Hotel owner, a gentleman by the name of Mike Freed, and who's owner of Post Ranch and very, a big advocate for sustainability. And he said, I really want you to meet this gentleman named Costas Chris. He's world renowned in this space. He works with a lot of hotel partners and destinations. I just think that there could be some really interesting synergies. Mm-hmm. And I think that there isn't a company or brand really doing this right now, especially for the independent hotels. And I sat down with Costas and we started talking about our passion for travel and it being a force for good. And there was just a lot of synergies. And what started out as a discussion around maybe how we could partner together, next thing you knew, we were acquiring his consulting company and decided that we were going to launch this brand. And it happened to coincide with COVID.
Oh, wow.
And some people would say, talk about courage to do something. Worst time to launch a brand and best time to launch a brand. Worst time
Let's see why.
The world was sort of shut down and I think people thought we were a little crazy to be investing and doing this. But at the same time, I think it was one of those moments where everybody realized how important sustainability was. We had some free time in some cases to really focus on how we wanted to do this. And we really came out of COVID, I think the entire industry really saying not only is travel something everybody wants, but it is a force for good, and the power of community, culture, and heritage, as well as the planet piece of it. And so that was how we launched the brand.
And where are we more committed, Europe or overseas?
We're committed everywhere. I just think different parts of the world are at different stages of the process. And Roberta can definitely elaborate. I think Europe's much further ahead than other parts of the world.
Because the EU is also pushing the agenda on sustainability. So there's a lot of hotels and businesses that are looking into sustainability. And in Italy, we've started with garbage disposal many years ago. So there's it's in the mindset.
Yeah.
So I think it was a little bit more in the DNA in general, just in terms of how they source their food and the community piece of it in general.
Think so. Yes.
The U.S. is obviously more focused on, I'll call it some of the bigger initiatives in terms of energy and waste, and but it's a global phenomenon. It's just
Absolutely.
what are governments doing to make it a priority, I think drives a lot of behavior. There's hotels that are doing it just because they believe in it and they want to.
Yeah, my question exactly was like, do you feel like it's a culture already, or do you feel like it's more of a checklist?
That's a tough question. I think for some people who don't really believe and understand the impact of what's happening, I think some of them see it as a checklist. I think more and more hoteliers and owners really understand that sustainable tourism, you have to do this if you want this to be something that's going to be your livelihood going on, because otherwise people aren't going to be able to travel to places that they used to. And I think that that's going to happen sooner versus later.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually recorded an episode last week talking about sustainability, and it is a trend. I don't remember the stats exactly, but a certain percentage of travelers are willing to spend more to stay at a hotel that is sustainable and is committed to sustainability rather than any other hotel.
Yeah, I think they look at it, and probably the younger generation is probably more so that way, because they want to be able to go to the places that we've all been able to go to. And it's just more in their DNA. I think certain things, depending on your age, that's what you expect.
Yeah.
It also has an important cultural aspect, I believe, which, isn't to be taken for granted. So I think independent hotels are very close to that because they are committed to the place they belong to. And I think, Beyond Green and sustainability, not only for the environment, but also for the community and for the culture, local culture. There's too many examples of luxury, sometimes devastating destinations. And we want to make sure with Beyond Green that we enforce a different mindset.
Yes.
We, as preferred travel group, we also are committed to the Global Action Plan. So, we signed the COP26 declaration, and we're committed to becoming zero emissions by 2050.
Yeah.
So we have our climate action plan in place and moving forward with that. So even as a business and as a company, we're committed to that.
So, and you said you enforce the mindset. So you're also helping hoteliers who maybe do not believe that much and are not that much committed, making this shift, from a checklist to a culture.
Absolutely. I think there was also this belief that sustainability meant lack of luxury, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, there's so many beautiful luxury hotels that are doing incredible things.
Yes.
And it really is about education. And that's why as a company, when we decided to commit to this, sign the Glasgow Declaration, I have learned so much that I never understood about the world of sustainability. And so that's fun when we do our global conferences and we educate the host hotel if they're not really good at how can you run a green meeting. And it's really tremendous what you can do, and you can do it in an ultra luxury way.
Yes.
That they say, oh, I didn't know that that's what sustainability meant. And sometimes it's I'll call it the reduce, reuse, recycle. And then sometimes it's like, no, we want to bring the community more into what we're doing. Let's talk about how you're hiring and sourcing. And you kind of really get into those things that sometimes people don't tell the story about, but that's half of the magic of what's happening on that property.
Yeah, true. So closing question. And here I want to quote Lindsey, because in past interviews you said that growth for growth's sake isn't the goal. So what does sustainable growth mean for Preferred Hotels and Resorts in the next few years?
So the great news is, as a company, with the exception of COVID, we've always grown year over year. And so when I say that, it's we want to continue to grow. The world is a big place, but we're very strategic about how we want to grow. So looking at new markets that we could grow in, also looking at new businesses that potentially we could acquire and partner with that would serve our member hotels. So I think growth takes a lot of different avenues. So when I say that, it's not just about number of hotels. It's really how can we grow to add value to our member partners, and as a company continue to grow so that we can support not just our member properties, but our own people.
Definitely.
And that's the fun, innovative part of what we do. Is there's a lot of different things we could get involved in that would allow us to grow.
Well, thank you.
My look at it.
Lindsey, Roberta, thank you so much for joining me on the Blue Corner. I really enjoyed conversating with you.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eugenia.
Thank you so much for being here.